All right, hey guys. So it's 2026 and Endfield just released without a keybind and keybind for controller remapping option. So I'm going to show you how to do that with Steam. Okay. You can remap anything you want and even add mode shift. So let's get started. First, you need to download Steam, and you need to run Steam as administrator. If you don't do this, nothing will work. Secondly, you need to connect your controller to your PC so that you have the ability to alter your controller keybinds. Next, you'll need to add Enfield as a non-Steam game. So in the bottom left corner here, select Add a Game, add a non-Steam game. And in here, you're going to Browse, and okay, so going to Browse, and then you're going to navigate until you find Enfield, the Enfield exe. You don't just add Grifflink, you add the exe. So for me, for example, this is my folder for a lot of my games. So going to Grifflink, games, Enfield game. You're going to scroll until you find Enfield.exe. So this is what you actually add into Steam. Once you've done this, it's going to Enfield is going to show up in your Steam library. So click into Enfield and click on the controller. So keep in mind, this controller button will only work if your controller is connected. It'll only show up that way. Now, actually, sorry about this. Let me just change to a random. Okay. So this is the default control setup. Here you can change the controller setup to whatever you want. Steam is really good for this. So going to edit layout, I'm just going to use an example. Let's say you play Genshin Impact and you want to change Enfield controls to be exactly the same as Genshin. So in Genshin, the X button is Alt, which doesn't matter in Enfield because you alt a different way. But in Genshin, the circle is normal attack, but in Enfield, it is, I think, dodge. So you want to change circle to normal attack. So here, we're going to change circle to what Enfield uses, which is X. So now when you press circle in the game, in Enfield, Steam is going to translate that over to X, which is going to let you do your normal attack. In Genshin, square is confirm. So here, I think in Endfield, confirm is Y. So I'm going to select Y. In Genshin, triangle is jump, and in Endfield, it's X. So we're going to change it to X. And dodge in Genshin is R1. So here, we're going to actually change this to Enfield's dodge button, which is B. Okay. So now we're done the first layer. When you play the game, most functions like normal attack, dodging, jumping is gonna work exactly the same as Genshin. So that's part one. Now let's move on to part two, because right now this is scuffed as hell. Because in Enfield you have to hold down L1 to use your skill or Alt. But you've just changed all of these buttons, and it's going to be really confusing. So what we're going to do is use a mode shift so that when I press L1, it's going to change all of these buttons to the default so you can skill and Alt normally. In order to do that, first go into action sets. Default is what we just changed, okay? Under default, press this gear icon. Add a layer, and let's just call it L1 pole. Or you can name it skill or alt, whatever you want. Now go here, press, so right now we're on the action set called default, which was just changed. Now, when we hold L1, I want it to shift into a different mapping when I hold L1. So click the gear icon, add an extra command. Under action sets, hold action set layer to the one I just set up, L1 pole. Okay, so this is going to both. So now when you hold L1, it's going to both activate the left bumper to bring up your skill and alt menu, but also go into your L1, go into a different key mapping that's different from this. So in order to change those key mapping, we're going to press up here, we're going to press the button so that the L1 pull action set is lit up. Here it just copied everything that I remapped, but we're going to change X back to X, circle back to circle, square back to square, and triangle back to triangle. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, so that concludes part 2. And guys, you can change these to whatever you want, right? I'm just using Genshin as an example, so that's all done. Just make sure though, sometimes Steam in the top left corner here, Steam, when you press a random button, here, watch this. If I press here, it's gonna go back to default, but it doesn't tell you it went back to default. So you might be editing in a different, you might think you're editing in a different layer, but you're just messing up your default layer. So just make sure you're always checking in the top left corner here to make sure that you're actually editing in the correct layer. So now this is all set up so that in combat, you're using your circle to normal attack, triangle to jump, and R1 to dodge, just like in Genshin. And then the moment you hold down L1, it's going to reset all of these buttons back to the default so that you can skill and alt normally in Endfield. So that's all nice and good, but it makes navigating the menu a pain in the ass because all your buttons now changed, and when it says Y on there, you have to remember to press square, which sucks. So this is the part 3, which is we're going to set up a new action set which just resets the controller back to complete default with no changes, okay? And we're going to switch between our combat mapping and our menu mapping with a single button. So here we're going to create a new action set instead of an action layer, action set. So outside of combat, or whatever you want to name it to. Now let's go back to button mapping. And here, just like with the L1 where I had to tell a button to switch to a different layer, now I have to tell a button to switch to a different set. So let's find a random button that I don't use often. So in this case, I'm going to use left trackpad. Okay, so over here, I'm going to pressing on the left trackpad. Instead of select, I'm going to change it to change action set to outside of combat. Perfect. Let me just make sure. You see, sometimes Steam is silly because it like removes the commands that you already set for some reason. So you have to, okay, so now it actually saved. And trackpad, I bet it didn't save, and I knew it. Okay. So this saved, and this saved. Okay, perfect. Now let's go and edit the outside of combat action set. So when you press the trackpad, it toggles to the outside of action key mapping, so it won't go back automatically, unlike with holding L1, unlike with the layers. So you have to set a button to bring it back. So we can just, in the outside of combat action set, we're just going to make the exact same button. When you press it again, it just switches you back to combat. Okay, so single button. Okay, and then change action set back to default. Okay, so this allows you to switch back and forth. And I always like to jump out and back in just to make sure it actually saved my stuff. Okay, so it's saved. Now let's go back to edit the buttons. So this one, we're just gonna make everything exactly default, okay? Circle, square, and triangle. L1, L2. Start and select. You see here it went back to default by itself, so we want to go back to outside of combat, directional pad. You know, it just ran. Basically, you're just mapping everything back to how it was, how it's supposed to be on default. Okay, I might just cut this part out, but you get it. It's the exact same same process for everything else. Okay, so everything's saved. Now, okay, I'm just gonna go back in and make sure all of my switches are saved properly. Perfect. Outside of combat, this is all saved. D-pad's all saved. Okay, perfect. So now this is all done. Now, when you go into the game, circle, auto attack, triangle jump, L1 dodge, R1 dodge. When you hold L1, it's going to remap everything back to triangle is triangle, square is square, circle is circle, and X is X. And then when you press on the left side of your trackpad, it's going to just reset everything back to default so that whatever shows on the game for you to press, you can just press that button. And then when you're in combat, you just press this again, press the left trackpad again, it'll switch you back to the combat keybind. So that's pretty much how you do this. If you guys have any questions, because this is a little complex, if you guys have any questions, just leave what you're trying to do down in the comments, and I'll try to walk you through what you need to do for your particular case, because here I just use Genshin as an example. So, all right, peace.